Feng Tianwu sighed faintly, her delicate and charming appearance evoking pity, although even now she still didn't understand why that 9-level Emperor Realm fire concept fragment would turn into liquid and merge into her body, creating some kind of resonance with the power from her fire spirit body. But in her opinion, none of that mattered anymore. Brother Duan. Unbeknownst to her, a purple figure appeared in Feng Tianwu's mind. A young man who always wore purple, with sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes, exceptionally handsome. Even if that prophecy isn't true, I, Feng Tianwu, will never regret knowing you in this life. As she murmured to herself, a blush spread across Feng Tianwu's pretty face, as if it could drip blood, her shy demeanor enough to captivate all. Duan Lingtian, of course, couldn't see Feng Tianwu's current shy expression. He was currently moving through various caves, continuing to search for the direction of this Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, with the intention of reaching the palace in the central area. That was the main highlight of the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure. Hunt. In terms of value, the Emperor Realm concept fragment within that Martial Emperor's body was enough to surpass the total value of all other treasures, including the 7 Emperor Realm concept fragments. No matter what, I must obtain that Emperor Realm concept fragment. Duan Lingtian, having merged with the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, naturally understood the preciousness of the Emperor Realm concept fragment better than anyone, even in the great treasure left by the reincarnation. Martial Emperor, there was only one Emperor Realm concept fragment, and it wasn't his. His Emperor Realm concept fragment was already used up when he underwent reincarnation. Through the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories, Duan Lingtian knew that one of the conditions for the reincarnation Martial Emperor's cultivation technique, the 3 lives reincarnation art, to undergo reincarnation each time, was to burn his own Emperor Realm concept fragment. Therefore, the reincarnation Martial Emperor's own Emperor Realm concept fragment was not left behind. The Emperor Realm concept fragment left by the reincarnation Martial Emperor was only a first-level Emperor Realm concept fragment, and it's one I can't use. Duan Lingtian's heart stirred. He mused. Perhaps the Emperor Realm concept fragment within the Martial Emperor who left behind this Martial Emperor's hidden treasure is exactly what I can use. Thinking of this, Duan Lingtian's mood became increasingly urgent. Whoosh! At the same time, Duan Lingtian's speed in continuing his search became even faster, as if he were rushing to be reincarnated. Time flowed silently. Duan Lingtian continued his relentless search. Along the way, the corpses of 5 Elements sect disciples appeared before his eyes, making his expression somewhat grim. Some of these 5 Elements sect disciples were even Wood Peak disciples, whom he knew. Before entering the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, these Wood Peak disciples had all treated him with great respect, calling him Senior Brother Lingtian repeatedly. He had to admit, every time he heard a group of Wood Peak disciples address him as Senior Brother Lingtian, he felt a secret satisfaction. After all, those Wood Peak disciples were all older than him, and now they had all become corpses. Tianwu, Suli, Brother Zhang, Danu, Shenwei, you all should be fine, right? As several figures flashed through his mind, Duan Lingtian felt a hint of worry. So far, what he was most grateful for was that among the piles of corpses he had seen along the way, there were none of his acquaintances, which made him feel a sense of relief. Time flowed silently. A month passed quickly. Duan Lingtian continued to move through the various caves in the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, encountering some unobservant young powerhouses along the way, who actively attacked him. But without exception, all of them died by his hand. So far, the strongest young powerhouse Duan Lingtian had encountered was that Peng Bao, a disciple of the Wuchang sect. Of course, Duan Lingtian also knew that within this Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, there must be other young powerhouses whose strength could rival Peng Bao, or even surpass him. Peng Bao came from the second-rate force, Wuchang sect, and among the young powerhouses who entered the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure this time, there were also people from 2 other second-rate forces. Among the top-ranked young powerhouses from those 2 second-rate forces, there were definitely individuals who could compare with Peng Bao, or even surpass him. Along the way, almost everyone who actively attacked Duan Lingtian was taken down by him in a single encounter. It's just a pity that I haven't encountered the other 4 Emperor Realm concept fragments. Thinking of this, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but feel a little lost, but he quickly became relieved. As he felt relieved, he couldn't help but chuckle, self-deprecatingly. I'm too greedy. I've already obtained 1 Emperor Realm concept fragment, and yet I'm still thinking about the other 4. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian's figure flashed, and he quickly entered a cave, where he immediately saw 2 corpses lying on the ground. The corpses had already rotted, emitting a nauseating stench. Duan Lingtian didn't cover his nose, nor did he show any expression of disgust. In his previous life on Earth, as a king of soldiers, he had encountered many similar scenes, and he had experienced many more disgusting ones, so he was already immune. Originally, this cave was just a place Duan Lingtian passed through casually. He had encountered many similar scenes along the way, not enough to surprise him, but now his figure, which was about to move towards another exit of the cave, suddenly paused, as if he had discovered something special. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's gaze was completely drawn to a plant at the very back of the cave. It was an extremely peculiar plant, its entire body not the usual green, but 3 other colors. Its slightly exposed roots were golden, its branches were purple, its leaves were red. Upon seeing this unique plant, Duan Lingtian subconsciously felt that it was extraordinary, and for a moment he couldn't help but search through the reincarnation Martial Emperor's lifelong memories, attempting to find an answer. Soon, he found the answer. 3. 3-colored tree. In an instant, Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted, his face filled with shock, and his eyes gleamed as if he had seen some precious treasure. But soon, Duan Lingtian's expression froze, only because he saw 3 small notches on the plant. It seems this 3-colored tree has already bore 3-colored fruits. The 3-colored fruits are not a single spirit fruit, but a collective term for 3 spirit fruits, each with a different color, and their medicinal power does not diminish. Their medicinal power is gentle, and even void-prying realm martials. Artists can consume them. For martial artists below the 4th level of the Void Transformation realm, any one of them is enough to help them break through one level. If the 3 spirit fruits are consumed by a 1st level Void Transformation realm martial artist, they can even cross 3 levels in a short period, directly entering the 4th level of the Void Transformation realm. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath, his brows furrowing. Who could it be? Their luck is actually this good. Judging by the marks on this 3-colored tree, the spirit fruits were harvested at least a month ago. Soon, Duan Lingtian carefully observed the 3-colored tree and murmured to himself, "If I were that person, after obtaining the 3 spirit fruits, I would definitely think of finding a secluded place to consume them and cultivate." After all, in this Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, only by being stronger can one live longer and obtain more valuable treasures. Thinking of this, a gleam flashed in Duan Lingtian's eyes. Perhaps I can search nearby for traces of the person who obtained the 3 spirit fruits. They must be cultivating in some secluded spot nearby, consuming the spirit fruits. It's impossible for him to have consumed all 3 spirit fruits in such a short time. Of course, Duan Lingtian had also considered that perhaps the 3 spirit fruits were obtained by 3 different people and had now become part of their internal elemental energy. But after his careful observation of the 2 corpses in the cave, he found that they were both killed by the same weapon and method, indicating that the killer was clearly the same person. It should be one person. Even if it's not, I'm going to take a gamble. If I'm right, I'll get at least 1 spirit fruit. If I'm wrong, it's just a waste of some time. Soon, Duan Lingtian made a decision in his heart. Although he had made a decision, Duan Lingtian was not in a hurry to leave. His gaze fell on the 3-colored tree, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It seems the person who took the 3-colored fruits isn't an expert. Although this 3-colored tree itself isn't as precious as the 3 spirit fruits, by adding some medicinal herbs for refining, it can be refined into a 3-colored pill that can slightly enhance one's cultivation. The 3-colored tree looked unremarkable. In fact, even with spiritual power probing, its special qualities couldn't be detected. However, the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories told Duan Lingtian that the 3-colored tree, as the carrier of the 3-colored fruits, had accumulated a lot of heaven and earth elemental energy over the years. This heaven and earth elemental energy was perfectly integrated with the 3-colored tree, becoming one. Only by using a special alchemy method could the heaven and earth spiritual energy accumulated within the 3-colored tree be mobilized, and combined with the 3-colored tree itself, refined into a 3-colored pill. The 3-colored pill isn't a difficult pill to refine. As long as one knows the method, a 3rd-grade alchemist can refine it. Let alone me, a 1st-grade alchemist. Duan Lingtian's face broke into a smile, and he had already made up his mind to refine the 3-colored pill. He happened to have the other medicinal herbs needed to refine the 3-colored pill. If it's just the medicinal power of a mere 3-colored pill, it won't be enough to help me break through. However, the medicinal power of the 3-colored pill can induce the potent medicinal power of the Nirvana pill, making it not difficult for me to break through to the 2nd level of the Void Transformation realm. Currently, Duan Lingtian harbored such thoughts. Although the medicinal power of the Nirvana pill was released much faster after he entered the Void Transformation realm, far surpassing what ordinary Void Transformation realm martial artists could achieve, it was still limited. To fully unleash the potent medicinal power of the Nirvana pill, it still required the stimulation of a spirit fruit's medicinal power. Of course, a pill similar to a spirit fruit, like the three-colored pill, could also work. Now, with the main ingredient for refining the three-color pill, the three-color tree, right before him, and the other necessary herbs for the three-color pill in Duanling Tian's hands, he immediately decided to refine the three-color pill. The three-color pill, in terms of grade, belongs to a grade 3 medicinal pill, and only alchemists of grade 3 or higher can successfully refine it. If one is not an alchemist of grade 3 or higher, even knowing the refining method is useless. However, Duanling Tian, having integrated the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor and inherited his lifelong alchemy techniques and experience, was a qualified alchemist of grade 3 or higher. Now that his cultivation had broken through to the void transformation stage, first level, with the reincarnation Martial Emperor's lifelong alchemy techniques and experience, he could directly condense a grade 1 pill fire. Therefore, he was now a grade 1 alchemist. Grade 1. Alchemists are extremely rare, even in the outer realm, usually only found in some first-rate forces, and in very small numbers. It is already extremely rare for a first-rate force to have even one grade 1 alchemist. Some first-rate forces don't even have a grade 1 alchemist. When they need grade 1 medicinal pills, they can only seek them from external grade 1 alchemists, which requires a huge price. However, even so, they still flock to them. The preciousness of grade 1 medicinal pills cannot be compared to grade 2 medicinal pills, let alone grade 3 medicinal pills and those below grade 3, which are even inferior to grade 2. Regardless of Duanling Tian's achievements in martial arts, the fact that he became a grade 1 artifact forger before the age of 30 alone was enough to shock many people. However, with the pill fire I currently wield, I need a grade 1 spirit artifact cauldron. To refine medicinal pills, after all, an ordinary cauldron simply cannot withstand my pill fire. Duanling Tian raised his hand and a wisp of purple flame ignited in his palm, surrounded by a golden edge. Purple gold pill fire. It was precisely grade 1 pill fire. Only a grade 1 spirit artifact cauldron could contain a grade 1 pill. Fire. A lower grade spirit artifact cauldron, enveloped by a grade 1 pill fire, would instantly melt into a puddle of liquid, let alone be used for refining medicinal pills. Refining a grade 1 spirit artifact cauldron is not difficult for me now. It's just that I don't seem to have enough materials to refine a grade 1 spirit artifact cauldron. Thinking of this, Duanling Tian frowned. Ever since his cultivation broke through to the void transformation stage, he could not only condense a grade 1 pill fire with his elemental energy, but also a grade 1 artifact fire. As someone who had integrated the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor and inherited his alchemy and artifact forging techniques and experience, from the moment he could condense grade 1 pill fire and grade 1 artifact fire, he was already considered a qualified grade 1 alchemist and grade 1 artifact forger. Furthermore, having inherited the reincarnation Martial Emperor's lifelong alchemy and artifact forging techniques and experience, even among the grade 1 alchemists and grade 1 artifact forgers on Cloud Continent, he was considered a top-tier existence. First, regarding alchemy, he could refine grade 1 medicinal pills with a purity of over 90%. Could other grade 1 alchemists do that? Next, regarding artifact forging, he could easily refine grade 1 spirit artifacts with an amplification power of 90%. Could other grade 1 artifact forgers do that, having integrated the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor? When he refined medicinal pills or spirit artifacts, it was as if the reincarnation Martial Emperor had been reborn, effortlessly refining the best of the best. I do have a lot of spatial rings. Many of them I haven't even opened yet. Perhaps I can find the materials needed to refine a grade 1 spirit artifact cauldron inside. Duanling Tian's heart stirred, and he took out a pile of spatial rings from the one on his hand, one by one performing the blood-binding ritual, intending to find the materials needed to refine a cauldron in these spatial rings. These spatial rings were all his spoils of war from the past, usually casually thrown into his spatial ring, too lazy to bother with. After examining more than 30 spatial rings, Duanling Tian stopped, as he had already gathered all the artifact forging materials needed to refine a grade 1 spirit artifact cauldron. When I have time later, I should also perform the blood-binding ritual on the remaining spatial rings, and take out the items inside. Otherwise, I won't know what's in them at a crucial moment. After this lesson, Duanling Tian made a resolution. Since he had gathered the materials, Duanling Tian began to refine the grade 1 spirit artifact cauldron, without deliberately seeking out a secluded place. With his artifact forging skills inherited from the Reincarnation Martial Emperor, and the fact that he was now a Grade 1 artifact forger, he could, to a certain extent, ignore external interferences. Even if there were interferences, at most, it would only affect the quality of the cauldron he refined. A Grade 1 spirit. Artifact Cauldron is an auxiliary spirit artifact, not an offensive spirit artifact, and does not need to be of extremely high quality. Generally speaking, the higher the quality of the spirit artifact cauldron, the higher the chance of successful pill formation. However, Duanling Tian, who had integrated the memories of the Reincarnation Martial Emperor and inherited his lifelong artifact forging techniques and experience, didn't need to worry about the quality of the spirit artifact at all, even with the worst quality spirit artifact cauldron, he could still achieve a 100% success rate in pill formation. All of this was because he had not only inherited the Reincarnation Martial Emperor's lifelong artifact forging techniques and experience, but also his lifelong alchemy techniques and experience. The Reincarnation Martial Emperor, having lived through 2 lifetimes, had reached the pinnacle of both artifact forging and alchemy on Cloud Continent. Duanling Tian, having integrated his memories, was naturally no less skilled than him. Begin. Duanling Tian's eyes flashed, and he took out his old spirit artifact cauldron. Then, with a pile of other artifact forging materials, began to refine the Grade 1 spirit artifact cauldron. Piece by piece, the materials turned into puddles of liquid, which Duanling Tian guided to float in the air. At the same time, Duanling Tian's hands moved like lightning, effortlessly employing incredibly profound artifact forging techniques, so fast that ordinary people couldn't even clearly see his movements. Soon, all the liquids merged together. As time passed, the prototype of the spirit artifact cauldron began to appear, and after Duanling Tian's subsequent refining, a Grade 1 spirit artifact cauldron quickly took shape. From beginning to end, Duanling Tian only spent 3 hours. If other Grade 1 artifact forgers on Cloud Continent were to witness such artifact forging speed, they would likely be stunned into a daze, unable to recover for a long time. An ordinary Grade 1 artifact forger would spend at least 3 to 5 days refining a Grade 1 spirit artifact like a cauldron. If they refined it carefully, it wouldn't be surprising to spend 10 days or so. However, Duanling Tian successfully refined the Grade 1 spirit artifact cauldron in just 3 short hours, and because there were no disturbances, the quality of the cauldron was extremely high. Whoosh! Raising his hand, Duanling Tian, who held the cauldron, glanced at it, then looked at the several exits of the cave, muttering to himself, "It seems there aren't many living people left in the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure. In 3 whole hours, not a second person has arrived here." Within the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, there were numerous treasures, enough to drive the young powerhouses who entered from outside insane. At the same time, a group of young powerhouses would naturally engage in a struggle, and casualties were inevitable. Along the way, Duanling Tian had seen no less than 50 corpses. They came for treasures, and when they first entered, they must have had very good fantasies. However, dreams are beautiful, but reality is cruel, and they all ended up losing their lives here. Thinking of the corpses scattered everywhere he had seen along the way, Duanling Tian couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Soon, Duanling Tian's gaze returned to the Grade 1 spirit artifact cauldron in his hand, a smile appearing on his face. Now, I can begin refining the 3-color pill. With a thought, Duanling Tian slowly pulled out the 3-color tree, cleaned off the soil, and then directly crumpled it into a ball and threw it into the cauldron. At the same time, Duanling Tian took out some other herbs, all of which were relatively common. Although the 3-color pill was a good Grade 3 medicinal pill, due to its low grade and its primary reliance on the main ingredient, the 3-color tree, the other herbs were not rare. With the herbs gathered, a wisp of purple-gold condensed flame ignited in Duanling Tian's hand, which was precisely the Grade 1 pill fire. As a Grade 1 alchemist, refining a Grade 3 medicinal pill like the 3-color pill naturally presented no pressure. Following the memories of the Reincarnation Martial Emperor, Duanling Tian's hand speed gradually increased, as if transforming into 2 constantly intertwining flashes of lightning, even causing the air currents to pulsate. Faint. Explosions sounded, continuous and unbroken, and the compressed air currents swept out, raising gusts of wind that swayed the flowers and plants in the damp cave. Even if it were another Grade 1 alchemist refining a Grade 3 medicinal pill like the 3-color pill, it would at most take 3 to 4 hours. And Duanling Tian, this Grade 1 alchemist, was naturally not comparable to other Grade 1 alchemists. In just 1 hour, he successfully extinguished the pill fire. Clang! As Duanling Tian's hands landed on the cauldron, a pill instantly shot out from within, a pill that looked extremely peculiar. The reason it was peculiar was because its surface was a mixture of 3 colors: gold, purple, and red. These were the three colors of the three-color tree, the three-color pill. Without any hesitation, Duanling Tian hurriedly threw the three-color pill into his mouth, then sat cross-legged on the ground in the low air, closing his eyes and beginning to cultivate. When Duanling Tian was in the void-prying stage, he cultivated the seventh transformation of the 9 Dragon War Sovereign technique, the Sword Dragon transformation. The Sword Dragon transformation, in addition to helping him comprehend the sword intent, also came with a set of heaven-grade high-rank sword techniques, the 9 Dragon Inch Flash, which was an extremely overbearing sword technique. Now, Duanling Tian's cultivation had broken through to the void transformation stage, so he was naturally no longer cultivating the seventh transformation of the 9 Dragon War Sovereign technique, the Sword Dragon transformation. He had now begun to cultivate the 8th transformation of the 9 Dragon War Sovereign technique, the 8th transformation of the 9 Dragon War Sovereign art, the Roaming Dragon transformation. The elemental energy within Duanling Tian's body circulated according to the mental cultivation method of the Roaming Dragon transformation, completing a full cycle in a short while. At the same time, the medicinal power of the three-colored pill flowed down his throat and integrated into his body, beginning to interact with his elemental energy. The potent medicinal power of the nirvana pill lurking in Duanling Tian's dantian seemed to sense something, suddenly surging forth, merging with his elemental energy, and converging with the medicinal power of the three-colored pill. In an instant, the elemental energy circulating within Duanling Tian's body accelerated, like a swiftly passing bolt of lightning, completing several cycles, according to the Roaming Dragon transformation, mental cultivation method in the blink of an eye. Gradually, Duanling Tian's mind began to immerse itself in cultivation. Of course, his spiritual energy remained constantly vigilant of the outside world. Should anyone approach, he would awaken immediately and strike at the intruder. Seeing the elemental energy within his body circulating according to the Roaming Dragon transformation mental cultivation method, with everything falling into place, Duanling Tian finally had time to ponder other matters. Dragon Soaring 9 Heavens is a heaven-grade, high-rank movement martial skill attached to the 8th transformation of the 9 Dragon War Sovereign art, the Roaming Dragon transformation. Its fundamental chapters are precisely Spirit Serpent movement and Wind-sweeping clouds. Duanling Tian's heart stirred, and he murmured, "However, I still lack a little to cultivate Dragon Soaring 9 Heavens to the minor accomplishment stage, using Wind-sweeping clouds as its foundation." Like ordinary martial skills, Dragon Soaring 9 Heavens is divided into 4 realms: initial, minor accomplishment, major accomplishment, and perfection. If it were merely the initial stage of Dragon Soaring 9 Heavens, its speed would even be inferior to the perfect stage of wind-sweeping clouds that Duanling Tian had mastered. Therefore, Duanling Tian did not directly switch to cultivating Dragon Soaring 9 Heavens. Recently, following the memories left by the reincarnation Martial Emperor, he had been more focused on using wind-sweeping clouds as a foundation, to directly master the minor accomplishment stage of Dragon Soaring 9 Heavens. By then his speed would be even swifter, easily surpassing the power of more than 10 ancient horned dragons. Additionally, the 8th transformation of the 9 Dragon War Sovereign art, the Roaming Dragon transformation, has another significant characteristic. It emphasizes nurturing fire with wind, comprehending the fire intent through the wind intent. Once the fire intent is comprehended, one can also master the technique of fire borrowing wind's momentum, further increasing the power of the fire intent. Fire borrowing wind's momentum was not unfamiliar to Duanling Tian. His old arch-nemesis, Zishang, had mastered such a technique, able to increase the power of his fire intent by half, similar to how earth intent utilizes earth's power. Unbeknownst to him, 2 fragments appeared in Duanling Tian's hands. One was a deep azure fragment, and the other was a deep purple fragment. These were precisely the 9th level high rank wind intent fragment and the 9th level high rank thunder intent fragment, originating from the body of the sect leader of the Crimson Moon sect, one of the 3 major forces in the region east of the Northern Desert. The Crimson Moon sect leader was jointly killed by the 5 Elements sect leader, Guochong, and Wood Peak Master, Qiyu. The 2 intent fragments came into Qiyu's hands, and Qiyu then gifted them to Duanling Tian. At this moment, Duanling Tian held the 2 intent fragments, simultaneously comprehending both intents, while silently cultivating the 8th transformation of the 9 Dragon War Sovereign art, the Roaming Dragon transformation mental cultivation method. Not long after, Duanling Tian discovered a problem. He found that while cultivating, the improvement of his wind intent was somewhat peculiar, completely exceeding his expectations, progressing much faster than before. At first, Duanling Tian thought he had suddenly become enlightened. But soon he realized that he hadn't suddenly become enlightened at all. The reason for this situation was entirely due to the roaming dragon transformation mental cultivation method, the 8th transformation of the 9 Dragon War Sovereign art, which he currently possessed. When his elemental energy circulated according to the roaming dragon transformation mental cultivation method, the speed at which he comprehended wind intent was significantly faster than before. At this point, he completely confirmed it. The 8th transformation of the 9 Dragon War Sovereign art, the roaming dragon transformation, not only allowed him to comprehend fire intent to a certain extent by using wind intent, but also greatly assisted him in comprehending wind intent. This point wasn't even recorded in the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories. Although the 9 Dragon War Sovereign art was created by the reincarnation Martial Emperor through 2 lifetimes, he never truly cultivated it after all. After muttering to himself for a while, Duanling Tian fully immersed himself in cultivation. His cultivation base rapidly increased. His wind intent and thunder intent also quietly improved. Boom! After an unknown amount of time, a soft sound echoed within Duanling Tian's body. It was the elemental energy, guided by the potent medicinal power of the Nirvana pill, breaking through the bottleneck that separated Duanling Tian's cultivation from the void prying stage 2nd level. After the bottleneck was broken, his cultivation instantly broke through to the void prying stage 2nd level. At the same time, the potent medicinal power of the Nirvana pill retreated back into Duanling Tian's Dantian, while the medicinal power of the 3-colored pill had long since been completely consumed. The medicinal power of the 3-colored pill alone could never have allowed Duanling Tian to achieve such a breakthrough in such a short time. Duanling Tian opened his eyes, a sharp glint flashing and disappearing within them. It feels like my wind intent and thunder intent are also close to breaking through. This time's harvest is quite good. Feeling the transformed elemental energy within his body, Duanling Tian also tentatively sensed the progress of his wind intent and thunder intent. Immediately, a satisfied smile appeared on his face. With these 4 9th-level intent fragments, I don't need to deliberately search for other intent fragments. Unbeknownst to him, 2 more intent fragments appeared in Duanling Tian's hands. These were precisely the 9th-level earth intent fragment and the 9th-level sword intent fragment. Duanling Tian weighed the 4 9th-level intent fragments in his hands, his smile growing even brighter. Senior Brother Wei, they're 9th-level intent fragments. Suddenly, a hurried and unpleasant voice clearly entered Duanling Tian's ears, causing him to instantly awaken and simultaneously put away the 4 intent fragments in his hands. I see them. 4 9th-level intent fragments. Another cold voice came, tinged with a hint of greed. At this moment, Duanling Tian, who had hastily risen, saw 2 young men appear within the cave, staring at him covetously. Among the 2, the lean young man stood in front and slightly behind, and to his right stood a young man with a hideous and terrifying face, extremely ugly in appearance. Kid, no need to hide. We already saw the 4 9th-level intent fragments you were just weighing in your hands. The terrifying-faced young man looked at Duanling Tian and grinned, but his smile was extremely ugly, worse than crying, and his voice was also extremely unpleasant. He was the owner of the first voice from earlier. Hearing the words of the hideous-faced young man, Duanling Tian slightly raised his eyebrows, but did not respond to the other party. At the same time, his spiritual energy instantly swept out, probing the cultivation of the 2 young men. Ha! Senior Brother Wei, look, he's been scared silly by us. Seeing Duanling Tian remain motionless, standing rooted to the spot, the terrifying-faced young man laughed triumphantly, his laughter growing increasingly arrogant. Senior Brother Wei, leave this kid to me. After killing him, I only want the 9th-level fire intent fragment in his hand. You can have the rest. Towards the end of his words, the terrifying-faced young man looked at the sturdy young man with a humble expression. The sturdy young man, addressed as Senior Brother Wei, nodded indifferently, never once looking Duanling Tian directly in the eye, as if he didn't put Duanling Tian in his sight at all. Of course, this was also because Duanling Tian appeared to be only around 25 years old. Such youth inevitably made people underestimate him. Hearing the sturdy young man's agreement, the terrifying-faced young man's eyes lit up. With a raise of his hand, a heavy spiked club appeared in his grip, imbued with rampant elemental energy, which then became entwined with a ball of flame. Kid, to die by my hand is considered a blessing you've cultivated over 3 lifetimes. As the terrifying-faced young man looked at Duanling Tian, his figure shot out, transforming into a rapidly firing cannonball, surrounded by vast flames fiercely smashing towards Duanling Tian. Boom! 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 Wherever he passed, the flame-wrapped spiked club swung, causing the air currents to compress and then explode, creating bursts of thunderous air blasts. As the bursts of air blasts sounded, waves of scorching heat transformed into strong winds, blowing in all directions, raising the temperature of the entire cave by several degrees. Whoosh. In a moment, the terrifying-faced young man arrived before Duanling Tian, his flame-wrapped spiked club in hand, swinging it down towards Duanling Tian like a falling meteor. At the same time, above the terrifying-faced young man's head, more than 500 ancient horned dragon phantoms bared their fangs and claws, pouncing towards Duanling Tian with fierce momentum. Void prying, stage first level high rank, fire intent, second grade spirit weapon. This was the strength of the terrifying-faced young man. Crack! Just as the terrifying-faced young man thought Duanling Tian would be blasted to death by his single strike, he was horrified to discover that the spiked club he had fiercely swung down had stopped midair. When he focused his gaze forward, he saw a scene that would be unforgettable for the rest of his life. Heavens. What did he see? The purple-clad young man, whom he had never taken seriously, had, at some unknown point, raised one hand and forcibly grabbed the spiked club he had swung down. One must know that strike contained the power of more than 500 ancient horned dragons. How is this possible? The terrifying-faced young man's expression changed drastically. His eyes suddenly narrowed. He exerted force, attempting to pull back his spiked club, which was gripped in the purple-clad young man's hand. Above the void, the more than 500 ancient horned dragon phantoms surged. He used all his strength, but found that his spiked club was rooted in the opponent's hand as if it had grown roots. Even before the terrifying-looking young man made his move, Duanling Tian had already sensed his cultivation and felt no apprehension. Seeing that the terrifying-looking young man had become greedy for the ninefold concept fragment in his hand and was attacking him, Duanling Tian didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed, a cold sneer playing on his lips. The spiked club the opponent swung at him, though imbued with the strength of over 500 ancient horned dragons, came with a formidable momentum, like a falling meteor. But Duanling Tian felt no fear at all. The strength of over 500 ancient horned dragons was nothing in his eyes now. He simply raised his hand and effortlessly caught the spiked club the opponent swung at him. Just as Duanling Tian easily caught the terrifying-looking young man's spiked club, and the young man, despite using all his strength, couldn't pull it back. His face changed drastically. Duanling Tian made another move. Whoosh! Duanling Tian, holding the spiked club, gave his hand a shake, easily swinging both the spiked club and the young man who was holding it. The next moment, a terrifying power erupted from Duanling Tian's hand, sweeping outwards. No! Seeing this, the terrifying-looking young man's face changed dramatically. He hastily released his grip on the spiked club, intending to escape. At this moment, in his eyes, the purple-clad young man before him was a god of death, capable of taking his life at any moment. Boom! A loud bang echoed as a yellowish-brown power, intertwined with cyan true energy, swept out, instantly engulfing the terrifying-looking young man and blasting him to death. After the young man was killed, his body continued to fly out like an arrow shot from a bow. Bang! His corpse slammed into the distant cave wall, leaving a dazzling pool of blood, then fell with a thud, utterly dead. Whoosh! At the same time, above Duanling Tian's head, a heaven and earth phenomenon formed, with a total of 700 ancient horned dragon phantoms appearing, coiling downwards, lifelike. Awesome. Duanling Tian let out a sigh of relief, feeling a surge of exhilaration. Just now, he had only used 2 concepts, the 2nd level high-grade wind concept and the 9th level intermediate-grade earth concept. Of course, these 2 concepts combined were only equivalent to the strength of 400 ancient horned dragons. However, besides using these 2 concepts, Duanling Tian had also used his Void Transformation Stage 2 Origin Energy, which had only recently transformed. When the Void Transformation Stage 2 Origin Energy was unleashed, it gave Duanling Tian a completely new sensation. The hot blood in his body seemed to boil completely at that moment. I underestimated you. Just then, a cold voice entered Duanling Tian's ears. Hearing this, Duanling Tian narrowed his eyes and looked, his gaze falling on the muscular young man standing not far away, the senior brother of the terrifying-looking young man. The terrifying-looking young man had been killed by Duanling Tian, yet this muscular young man showed no anger or sadness, not even a trace of agitation. It was as if the person who had just died at Duanling Tian's hands was not his junior brother, but someone completely unrelated to him. He's not running away. Seeing the muscular young man staring at him with cold eyes, Duanling Tian couldn't help but be surprised. Just now, he had displayed a power equivalent to 700 ancient horned dragons without using a spirit weapon. This void. Transformation. Stage 2 martial artist, having witnessed his move, wasn't scared at all. As early as when he sensed the cultivation of the terrifying-looking young man, Duanling Tian had also sensed the cultivation of the muscular young man. Void, prying, Stage 2. In his opinion, a void prying Stage 2 martial artist generally only comprehends first or second level void transformation concepts. Even if he comprehended the second level void transformation concept, without a spirit weapon and with his origin energy, he could at most unleash the power of 600 ancient horned dragons, far less than his 700 ancient horned dragons. Because of this, Duanling Tian felt puzzled. Why was this muscular young man so confident in front of him, even after witnessing his strength? Whoosh! Soon, as the heaven and earth power above the muscular young man's head fluctuated and converged into a heaven and earth phenomenon, Duanling Tian got his answer. Origin energy surged from the muscular young man's body, then transformed into yellowish-brown power, which was the perfect fusion of earth concept and origin energy. Immediately after, the yellowish-brown power swirling around the muscular young man's body seemed to resonate with the entire cave, becoming even deeper in color and clearly imbued with wisps of destructive aura. At the same time, above the muscular young man's head, 300 ancient horned dragon phantoms first appeared, followed by another 400 ancient horned dragon phantoms. Finally, 200 ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared. Void transformation. Stage 2, with all origin energy unleashed, was equivalent to the strength of 300 ancient horned dragons. The third level high-grade Earth concept was equivalent to the strength of 400 ancient horned dragons. The Earth concept, by leveraging the power of the Earth, gained an additional half-fold of power, which was 200 ancient horned dragons. Without a spirit weapon, the muscular young man's total power was equivalent to 900 ancient horned dragons, completely surpassing the 700 ancient horned dragons Duanling Tian had just displayed. So that's it. Seeing the strength displayed by the muscular young man, Duanling Tian suddenly understood, finally realizing why the other party was so confident. The other party had actually comprehended the third level void transformation concept. And it was the Earth concept. However, even though the muscular young man displayed such powerful strength, Duanling Tian's expression remained unchanged. Instead, he muttered to himself with interest, "A little interesting. Die." Just then, the muscular young man's cold eyes swept over Duanling Tian. Then he let out a cold shout and took a step forward. As he stepped forward, a 3-foot green sword appeared in his hand. When the yellowish-brown power from his body surged into the 3-foot green sword, the sword seemed to be imbued with life, trembling violently and emitting crisp sword hums. Whoosh! In an instant, beside the 900 ancient horned dragon phantoms above the muscular young man's head, another 230-odd ancient horned dragon phantoms were added. Evidently, the 3-foot green sword in his hand was a second-grade spirit sword, which, on the basis of void transformation, Stage 2 origin energy, amplified his power by 78%, equivalent to the strength of over 230 ancient horned dragons. In other words, at this moment, the second-grade spirit sword in the muscular young man's hand contained the power of over 1,130 ancient horned dragons. Whoosh! Almost at the moment the second-grade spirit sword hummed, the muscular young man moved, soaring out like a shadow, clinging to Duanling Tian. If it were Duanling Tian before breaking through to void transformation Stage 2, facing the muscular young man, he might have been panicked, apprehensive, and even unable to contend with him. But the current Duanling Tian showed no panic at all, his face as calm as water. Whoosh! He didn't know when, but a sword appeared in his hand. A sword emanating a destructive aura, which was a quasi-emperor-grade spirit sword. The next moment, Duanling Tian's origin energy surged, then transformed into yellowish-brown power, which, like the yellowish-brown power on the muscular young man, resonated with the entire cave. On the surface of the yellowish-brown power, deep purple lightning bolts and fierce cyan gales soon appeared, emitting a series of intimidating auras. The yellowish-brown power, intertwined with lightning bolts and gales, surged into the quasi-emperor-grade spirit sword with destructive force, causing the sword's light to burst and its hum to rise. All of this happened in an instant. By the time the heaven and earth power above Duanling Tian's head began to fluctuate, the muscular young man, with his sword, had already appeared before Duanling Tian, just inches away. Whoosh! A sword came from the west, filled with extreme coldness, and sharp sword chi raged like gusts of cold wind blowing on Duanling Tian's face, causing his eyes to involuntarily narrow. Sword drawing. Technique. Without any hesitation, Duanling Tian flicked the sword in his hand, which transformed into a bolt of lightning, blocking in front of him. Clang! Almost at the same time, the second-grade spirit sword in the muscular young man's hand collided with the quasi-emperor grade spirit sword in Duanling Tian's hand, the sword tip resting on the blade of the quasi-emperor grade spirit sword. A cold snort came, faintly mixed with some apprehension. The muscular young man's attack failed, and he swiftly retreated, moving back to a distance. His entire movement was fluid and clean. Whoosh! At the same time, the heaven and earth phenomenon above Duanling Tian's head finally formed, appearing before the muscular young man, startling him and causing his pupils to contract slightly. Above Duanling Tian's head, 1,002 or 150 ancient horned dragon phantoms hovered there, poised for action, giving off an immense sense of pressure. Impossible! The muscular young man quickly recovered, his face changing, and he said in disbelief, "Nothing is impossible." The moment the muscular young man's face changed, Duanling Tian moved like a ghost, directly rushing towards the muscular young man, his quasi-emperor-grade spirit sword following like a shadow. Flee, facing the surging Duanling Tian, and seeing the 1,250 ancient horned dragon phantoms above Duanling Tian's head, the muscular young man's face changed again. He had no will to fight, and turned to flee. Trying to escape? Seeing this scene, Duanling Tian smiled, a wild smile. Whoosh! At the same time, the quasi-emperor-grade spirit sword in his hand had already shot forward, 9 dragon's inch radiance. Flash! Violent power surged out, transforming into 3 yellowish-brown divine dragons intertwined with lightning bolts and cyan gales. The 3 divine dragons' eyes flashed, and 6 extreme inch radiance shots out. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 6 extreme inch radiance tore through the air, moving at an astonishing speed. It must be said that the muscular young man reacted very quickly. Almost at the moment Duanling Tian drew his sword, he briefly turned back, and the second-grade spirit sword in his hand shot out, intending to defend. Clang! 1 extreme inch radiance was blocked by him, his second-grade spirit sword was knocked away, and the tiger's mouth of his sword-wielding hand split, bleeding profusely. However, he had no chance to stop the bleeding. At this moment, 5 vital points on his body each had a ghastly and terrifying blood hole. After 5 blood arrows shot out from 5 vital points on the robust young man's body, his once sparkling eyes completely dimmed, his body trembled, and then he swayed precariously. Boom! His body finally fell, hitting the ground with a thud, and he was completely silent. At the same time, the 3 earthy yellow divine dragons, entwined with purple lightning and azure gale, vanished into thin air, as if they had never appeared. Duanling Tian put away the quasi-emperor-grade spirit, sword in his hand, his gaze falling on the robust young man's corpse, a glint flashing in his eyes before he muttered to himself, "If my cultivation hadn't broken through to the void-prying stage 2nd level, I wouldn't have been his match." Duanling Tian was certain of this. Of course, even with this certainty, Duanling Tian didn't feel any fear. Even if he wasn't the opponent's match, and even if he couldn't escape from the opponent's grasp, he wouldn't be the one to die in the end. He had 2 extremely terrifying talismans in his possession, left to him by his cheap father, Duanru Feng, killing a void. Prying stage, 2nd-level martial artist was not a difficult task. Precisely because of this, he was fearless. In his opinion, for the sake of his life, it was no big deal to waste a talisman. After all, no external possession was more important than one's own life. These 2 should also be from a second-rate force. After Duanling Tian put the terrifying-faced young man's and the robust young man's spatial rings and spirit weapons into his own spatial ring, he couldn't help but secretly guess, if they weren't from a second-rate force, they couldn't possibly have such strong power. Duanling Tian made this guess based on that. Their strength, even among the young disciples who came from their respective forces, they are probably considered to be among the top ranks. Duanling Tian guessed again. Now, it's time to find the person who obtained the 3-color fruit. If it truly was one person who obtained those 3 spirit fruits, he would have consumed at most one of them by now. With a change of thought, Duanling Tian began to search extensively in all directions, centered on the damp cave, just to find the person who had obtained the 3-color fruit. If it was one person, once he found them, he would gain a great opportunity. If I can obtain 2 of the 3-color fruit spirit fruits and use the medicinal power of the 2 spirit fruits to activate the potent medicinal power of the Nirvana pill, I might be able to break through to the void-prying stage, 5th level in one go. And Duanling Tian had no doubt about this. He knew the medicinal power of the 3-color fruit, clearly through the memories of the reincarnated Martial Emperor. The 3-color fruit was enough to help him break through to the void-prying stage 4th level in one go. Coupled with the potent medicinal power of the Nirvana pill, it was almost 100% certain he could break through to the void-prying stage 5th level, and even had a certain chance to break through to the void prying stage, 6th level. Void. Prying stage, 5th level. Void prying stage, 6th level. Thinking of this, Duanling Tian's heart couldn't help but stir with excitement, and his speed became even faster. I hope only one person truly obtained the 3-color fruit, and that he is indeed cultivating in a secluded spot nearby, giving me a chance to find him and even seize the remaining spirit fruits from him. While searching in a carpet-like manner in all directions, Duanling Tian silently prayed in his heart. And in a secluded cave, not far from the damp cave, within a small, dark, and eerie inner cave, a person sat cross-legged, quietly cultivating. This cave was located in a hidden corner of the ceiling of a secluded cave, extremely concealed. Most people passing by here would likely miss it, looking. At the opening in the ceiling, it wasn't dilapidated, clearly, having been recently opened by someone. At some unknown point, a sigh of relief emanated from within the dark and eerie cave. Finally, I've broken through to the void-prying stage, 1st level. A voice came out, filled with excited joy. The owner of the voice was none other than Zi Shang, who had obtained the 3 spirit fruits a month ago. A month ago, after Shang obtained the 3 spirit fruits, he prepared to find a secluded place to cultivate. But after searching for a long time, he still couldn't find a suitable place. Finally, he found this inconspicuous, secluded cave and carved out this small cave in an inconspicuous corner of the cave's ceiling. The small cave was backlit, and not a single ray of light could penetrate inside. People outside, unless they deliberately conducted a thorough search, would almost certainly not discover this small cave that Zishang had opened. Therefore, Zishang had been cultivating inside with peace of mind. A month passed, and he finally digested the medicinal power of one of the spirit fruits, successfully breaking through from the void transformation stage, 7th level, to the void prying stage, 1st level. Quickly consume and absorb the other 2 spirit fruits. Only then can you achieve something in this Martial Emperor's hidden treasure. Otherwise, even if my soul possesses your body, I might not be able to handle the outstanding young disciples of those second-rate forces. A sinister, hoarse, and ancient voice echoed in Zishang's mind, reminding him, "Yes, old ghost." Hearing the voice, Zishang respectfully responded, not daring to show any slack, and hurriedly took out another spirit fruit to consume and cultivate. Soon, he was immersed in cultivation again, and his cultivation quickly improved. The current Zishang did not know that his arch-rival, Duanling Tian, was searching in all directions in a carpet-like manner, centered on the damp cave where he had discovered the 3 spirit fruits a month ago. It wouldn't be long before he arrived here. In the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, within a cave as vast as a martial arts arena, broken stone fragments were scattered all over the cave floor. Mixed with the stone fragments were hundreds of azure fragments, all of which were wind-intent fragments. Inside the cave, 3 groups of people stood, confronting each other. At this moment, most of their gazes were fixed on the exquisite, half-exposed box on the ceiling in the center of the cave, clearly filled with curiosity and longing for the treasures stored inside. Danyu, do you have confidence? At this moment, the red-clothed young man standing beside a tall and sturdy young man took a deep breath and asked softly. The 3rd young man, who was nearing middle age, stood to the side, and a hint of apprehension arose in his eyes as he looked at the other 2 groups. I can only try. The tall and sturdy young man was Huang Danyu, a disciple of the Wood Peak of the 5 Elements sect, and he looked solemn, as if facing a formidable enemy. As for those standing beside Huang Danyu, they were Su Li and Zhang Shuyong, disciples of the Blade and Sword sect. They had met and become friends because of the same person. Since everyone wants that treasure, then let's fight. At this moment, one of the groups roared, their figures surging forward, directly charging towards another group. In an instant, 3 people from the former group easily overpowered 2 people from the latter group, and in a moment, one of their opponents faced a life-or-death crisis. Not good. Huang Danyo and the other 2 hadn't expected the 3 people from the former group to be so powerful, completely surpassing the other 2 people, as well as their own 3 people. Once the other 2 people were killed, their fate could be imagined. We'll help you. Huang Danyu and the other 2 flew out, joining the battle, helping the other 2 to resist the 3 powerful individuals who surpassed them, momentarily putting the opponents at a disadvantage. Soon, the blue-clothed young man among the 3 who hadn't made much of a move suddenly erupted, displaying his void transformation stage, 9th level cultivation, and 9th level advanced earth intent, turning the tide of the battle. For a time, their group of 3 and Huang Danyu's group of 5 fought to a standstill. However, because there was a void transformation stage, 9th level martial artist among the 3 who had comprehended 9th level advanced earth intent, Huang Danyu and his group gradually fell into a disadvantage. Damn it! The faces of Huang Danyu and the other 8 were extremely grim. Finally, they were forced to retreat far away, looking at the 3 individuals in the distance, their faces filled with unwillingness. But even if they were unwilling, they couldn't do anything, as they were no match for their opponents. The strongest young man among the 3 disdainfully swept his gaze over Huang Danyu and the others, then flew up and took down the exquisite box from the ceiling in the center of the cave. Under the envious gazes of Huang Danyu and the others, the young man opened the exquisite box. A fragment, shimmering with azure ki, appeared before everyone present. That is, Huang Danyu's pupils constricted. Intent fragment? It doesn't seem quite like it. Intent fragments don't seem to shimmer with any ki, do they? Could that be an axiom fragment? Zhang Shuyong swallowed hard, guessing with a look of astonishment. Axiom fragment? As soon as Zhang Shuyong said this, Huang Danyu and Su Li were dumbfounded. It is indeed an axiom fragment. At this moment, one of the 2 young men standing beside Zhang Shuyong and the other 2 said, at this very moment, his gaze was fixed intently on the fragment shimmering with azure ki inside the exquisite box in the distance, as if it had taken root there. Congratulations, young man. This 8th level Emperor Stage Wind Axiom fragment is yours. Just as Zhang Shuyong and the other 2 were curious as to why the young man from an unknown force beside them recognized the axiom fragment, a familiar yet unfamiliar voice entered their ears. The voice came from the opened exquisite box, carrying a strong, penetrating power, spreading far and wide. 8th level Emperor Stage Axiom fragment? Huang Danyu's pupils shrank, and his gaze towards the young man holding the exquisite box in the distance was filled with killing intent. But soon, a hint of helplessness appeared on his face again. Aside from comprehending the same earth intent as him and being able to utilize the power of earth, the opponent was also a void transformation stage 9th level martial artist. Therefore, he was no match for the opponent. Damn it, it's actually an 8th level Emperor Stage Axiom fragment. The faces of the 2 people standing beside Huang Danyu and the other 2 changed drastically. At this moment, even Su Li and Zhang Shuyong were completely stunned. The fragment of profound truth had already filled them with immense surprise. After all, even the most mediocre fragment of profound truth was something nurtured within the body of a martial emperor. Martial emperors, to them, were legendary, unattainable beings. Now the voice of the martial emperor who left behind this martial emperor's hidden treasure reached their ears, reminding them that the fragment of profound truth was no ordinary emperor tier fragment of profound truth. An 8th level emperor tier fragment of profound truth. Emperor tier. Profound truths were divided into 9 levels, each stronger than the last. A 1st level emperor tier fragment of profound truth could help a 9th level void prying martial artist who had comprehended the corresponding 9th level void transformation concept, achieve the martial emperor realm, and become a martial emperor. An 8th level emperor tier fragment of profound truth, in addition to helping a 9th level void prying martial artist achieve martial emperor realm. Cultivation could also allow them to quickly elevate their comprehended profound truth to the 8th level after breaking through to the martial emperor realm. The preciousness of an 8th level emperor tier fragment of profound truth was self-evident. Ha 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 ha. The young man, holding the exquisite box and staring intently at the 8th level emperor tier wind profound truth fragment inside, couldn't help but burst into laughter. A moment later his laughter ceased, and he gazed at the 5 grim-faced individuals, his eyes finally landing on the 2 young men beside Huang Danyu, Su Li, and Zhang Shuyong. The people of Wuchang sect are truly useless. The young man spoke slowly, his words full of mockery. You! The 2 Wuchang sect disciples, who had been ridiculed, turned pale and were too angry to speak for a long time. Wuchang sect? Hearing the young man's words, Huang Danyu and the other 2 were startled, never expecting that the people they had just helped were Wuchang sect disciples. No wonder both of them were so strong. Even people from second-rate forces have come? Huang Danyu and the other 2 exchanged glances, and for a moment they could all see inexplicable shock in each other's eyes. Although they knew there were other entrances to the martial emperor's hidden treasure, they didn't know who would come from those other entrances. Now it seemed that even people from second-rate forces were present. The people of Wuchang sect are useless, and the people of your Chuyun sect aren't much stronger. Suddenly, an indifferent voice echoed through the cave. A figure appeared, silently before everyone's eyes. This was a young man in black, with an evil appearance and an indifferent face. His eyes seemed lifeless, yet they contained hidden killing intent, giving off an invisible sense of oppression. No one knew when the black-clad young man had appeared. It wasn't until he spoke that everyone, including Huang Danyu, noticed him. "Oh, dude, who are you?" The Chuyan sect disciple holding the exquisite box couldn't help but change his expression, then looked at the black-clad young man with apprehension and asked in a deep voice, "The dead don't need to know who I am." The black-clad young man spoke again, his voice still indifferent. Before anyone could react, he moved, disappearing from their sight. Where is he? Just as Huang Danyu, Su Li, and Zhang Shuyong were looking. Surprised and puzzled, they only felt a flash before their eyes. Boom! The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground reached their ears. Immediately after, they saw, at some unknown point, the Chuyan sect disciple holding the exquisite box containing the 8th level Emperor tier Wind Profound Truth fragment had fallen, with no visible injuries on his body. But everyone, including Huang Danyu, could tell that he had completely lost his breath and was clearly dead. Beside the body of the Chuyan sect disciple, the black-clad young man stood there, his face calm, as if the death of the Chuyan sect disciple had nothing to do with him. The exquisite box, which had been in the Chuyan sect disciple's hand, was now in his hand, its 8th level Emperor tier, Wind Profound Truth fragment continuously flashing with bursts of green energy. So fast! When Huang Danyu and the others looked at the black-clad young man again, their pupils constricted, their faces filled with horror. They had not captured any trace of when the black-clad young man had attacked and killed the Chuyan sect disciple, simply because his speed was too great. Even martial artists at the 1st or 2nd level avoid prying. Their speed might not be this fast, right? Huang Danyu thought to himself. Soon, Huang Danyu's expression changed dramatically because he noticed that after the black-clad young man put away the exquisite box in his hand, his indifferent gaze swept over their group. Killing intent flashed. Suddenly, everyone, including Huang Danyu, felt as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Those who can withstand one of my attacks and not die may live. Just then, the black-clad young man spoke, his voice as cold as ever, yet it sent Huang Danyu and the others into a panic. Before anyone could react, the black-clad young man had raised his right foot and then stomped on the ground like lightning, as if he had some deep-seated grudge against the ground. Bang! As the black-clad young man's foot landed, a loud bang spread, and the terrifying sound waves caused Huang Danyu and the others to turn pale. Crack! The next moment, everyone saw countless cracks spreading out in all directions from where the black-clad young man had landed, forming a giant spiderweb. As countless cracks spread, they contained 7 extremely terrifying forces which spread, along with the cracks surging towards the 7 people, including Huang Danyu. Not good. Huang Danyu and Zhang Shouyong's faces changed dramatically. They were both martial artists who had comprehended the earth concept and had a keen sense of it. They clearly sensed that those 7 forces were indeed the earth concept, and it was high-level earth concept, not of a low tier. The moment their expressions changed, they only had time to frantically mobilize and control their own comprehended earth concept, achieving some kind of resonance with the earth, intending to resist that overbearing earth concept. Su Li, fly up. The moment Huang Danyu took action, he roared, reminding Su Li. After hearing the black-clad young man's words, Su Li's nerves had already subconsciously tensed. Now, hearing Huang Danyu's hurried shout, he didn't hesitate at all and hastily ascended into the air. Boom, 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 boom. Almost the instant Su Li leaped up, a series of explosions rang out. Su Li only felt a terrifying impact from beneath his feet, pushing him up towards the cave ceiling, causing him to hit the ceiling with a defenseless bang, leaving him dizzy. As for Huang Danyu and Zhang Shuyong, because they had timely unleashed the earth concept and generated some kind of resonance with the entire earth, they were not greatly affected, only spitting out a mouthful of clotted blood from the shock. As for the remaining 2 Chuyan sect disciples and 2 Wuchang sect disciples, they were not as fortunate. Their bodies exploded, leaving behind only scattered remains and blood. You're lucky. The indifferent voice sounded again, devoid of any emotion, reaching the ears of Huang Danyu and the other 2. It was the voice of the black-clad young man. As soon as his voice fell, the black-clad young man's figure disappeared from the sight. Of Huang Danyu and the other 2. Damn it! When my strength surpasses his, I will absolutely not let him go. Huang Danyu was somewhat exasperated. What exactly happened? Su Li, who had finally managed to stabilize himself, descended from the air and looked at the 5 large pits that had appeared on the wide ground of the cave, asking with wide eyes. That guy just now used his earth concept to attack us. Besides Zhang Shuyong and me, who timely communicated with the earth using earth concept to gain protection and resist his earth concept, all the earth concepts that surged towards you were detonated, Huang Danyu said with apprehension. I was so scared just now. Thankfully, Danu, you reminded Su Li in time. Otherwise, Su Li's fate would probably have been the same as theirs. Looking at the scattered remains and bloodstains, Zhang Shuyong's face was filled with lingering fear. Danu, thank you. Su Li sincerely thanked Huang Danyu. He had indeed heard Huang Danyu's reminder, which allowed him to ascend into the air in time and avoid the exploding Earth concept. Don't thank me, I just subconsciously reminded you. The most important thing is that you were able to react immediately and ascend into the air in time. Otherwise, even with my reminder, you would have been hard-pressed to escape, Huang Danyu said, shaking his head. Later, Huang Danyu's expression darkened. Who exactly is that guy? He doesn't treat our lives as lives at all. He already got the fragment of profound truth, yet he still wanted to kill us. Su Li and Zhang Shuyong's expressions were not very good upon hearing this. That black-clad young man, in just a few words, had held their fates in his hands. That feeling made them very uncomfortable. In another cave, far from the one where Huang, Danyu and the other two were located within the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure. Loud bangs echoed, and it fell into silence after a long while. Inside the cave, two young men stood there. Around their bodies, the ground was covered with shattered rocks, mixed with countless blue fragments, over 100 of them, which were precisely water concept fragments. If Duan Lingtian were here, he would definitely recognize at a glance. These two young men were precisely the two surviving young disciples of the Sun-Moon sect. Hu Lin, Zhang Ping. Hu Lin, the treasure guarded by so many puppets? It must not be simple, right? Zhang Ping looked up at the ceiling in the center of the cave, where an exquisite box was embedded, clearly containing a remarkable treasure. Let's take it down and see, Hu Lin said indifferently, and with a movement of his body, he intended to retrieve the exquisite box. Whoosh! Just then, an extremely cold and scorching, yet contradictorily combined, aura emanated through the air, stopping Hu Lin and simultaneously causing both Hu Lin and Zhang Ping's expressions to change dramatically. A moment later, a figure appeared before their eyes. It's you! Looking at the young man before them, Hu Lin and Zhang Ping's expressions darkened. They were not unfamiliar with this young man. He was Zhang Yan, the leader among the group of young disciples from the Duanqing sect. So it's you two. Zhang Yan gazed at the two Sun-Moon sect disciples before him with a cold expression, his tone indifferent as he said, You two are quite lucky to have encountered an attainment fragment. Attainment fragment? Upon hearing Zhang Yan's words, both Hu Lin and Zhang Ping's pupils involuntarily contracted, and their expressions became somewhat dazed. A moment later, Hu Lin was the first to recover, immediately gazing at the exquisite box embedded in the center of the cave ceiling and muttered, You mean the treasure inside that exquisite box is an attainment fragment? Whether there's an attainment fragment inside or not, it no longer concerns you two. Facing Hu Lin's question, Zhang Yan continued, his voice as calm and hollow as before, devoid of any emotion. Why? Zhang Ping, who had just recovered, asked instinctively, somewhat bewildered. Because the dead don't need to know that much. Zhang Yan spoke calmly again. As soon as his voice fell, he moved. He suddenly raised both hands, bending his arms back, and his back trembled. His arms and back were like a powerful bow drawn taut. His trembling back was even more like a fully drawn bowstring, quivering slightly, ready to shoot the arrow placed upon it at any moment. Such arrogance. Upon hearing Zhang Yan's words, Zhang Ping fully sobered up, while Hu Lin sneered, his rolling Yuan Li surging around him, his attainment following him like a shadow. Whoosh! Immediately after, a 3-foot-long green sword, his second-grade spirit sword that he always carried, appeared in his hand. Whoosh! Hu Lin's gaze was sharp as he transformed into a swift wind, striking at Zhang Yan with a sword, showing no mercy. Above the void, the power of heaven and earth surged, converging into more than 600 ancient horned dragon phantoms, bearing their fangs and claws as they pounced towards Zhang Yan with fierce momentum. Void transformation. Realm. First level. Second level high-grade sword attainment. This was Hu Lin's true strength as the foremost young genius of the Sun-Moon sect. Buzz. And the moment Hu Lin made his move, Zhang Ping also recovered, a second-grade spirit blade appearing out. Of thin air in his hand, Yuan Li raging, and his attainment integrated into it. Without any hesitation, he joined forces with Hu Lin, attacking Zhang Yan together. Above Zhang Ping's head, there were more than 500 ancient horned dragon phantoms, exactly 100 fewer than Hu Lin's. Void transformation realm, first level. First level high-grade blade attainment. Zhang Ping, the second-ranked young genius of the Sun-Moon sect, his strength only surpassed by Hu Lin. Hu Lin and Zhang Ping shot out, a blade and a sword striking at Zhang Yan, aiming for vital points, showing no mercy. Zhang Yan, whose hands were formed into palms and arms pulled back, making him resemble a powerful bow, had his back tremble slightly. Around the second-grade spirit gloves on his hands, wisps of blue flames appeared. The coexistence of scorching heat and icy cold, a contradictory combination, caused the airflow in the air to be squeezed, involuntarily creating bursts of faint air explosions, one after another, ceaselessly. Whoosh! Just as the second-grade spirit sword and second-grade spirit blade in Hu Lin and Zhang Ping's hands struck at Zhang Yan, the turbulent power of heaven and earth above Zhang Yan's head finally converged into a celestial phenomenon. 978 ancient horned dragon phantoms circled down, poised to strike, giving off an extremely strong sense of oppression. No, Hu Lin and Zhang Ping, who had been full of confidence and believed they could kill Zhang Yan, both changed color upon seeing the celestial phenomenon above Zhang Yan's head. Zhang Ping even cried out in terror, "Boom! Boom!" Just as Hu Lin and Zhang Ping's faces changed drastically and Zhang Ping cried out in alarm, Zhang Yan finally moved. His arms, which had been drawn like a powerful bow, vibrated, his back stopped trembling, and his two palms, imbued with surging blue flames, swiftly shot out, enveloping Hu Lin and Zhang Ping, meeting their fierce attacks. Between Hu Lin and Zhang Ping, Hu Lin was the stronger one, but even Hu Lin, using his full strength, possessed power equivalent to no more than 600 ancient horned dragons. Such power, encountering Zhang Yan's destructive force of over 900 ancient horned dragons, had an obvious outcome. Bang! Bang! In a flash of lightning, Hu Lin and the other were, as expected, annihilated by Zhang Yan. After they were killed, their bodies continued flying without losing momentum, like arrows shot from a bowstring, slamming into the distant cave wall and kicking up a cloud of dust. Thus, all the disciples of the Sun-Moon sect who entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure were wiped out. After killing Hu Lin and the other, Zhang Yan, as if nothing had happened, casually floated up and took down the exquisite box embedded in the center of the cave ceiling. He didn't rush to open the box. His gaze, as if by some strange impulse, involuntarily fell upon the hundreds of water attainment fragments mixed among the rubble on the cave floor. According to my previous experience, the attainment fragment in this box should be a water attainment fragment. I'm thinking. Of this, Zhang Yan's breathing quickened. A fire attainment fragment was useless to him, but a water attainment fragment was of extraordinary significance to him. He could use it in the future to comprehend water attainment. After all, having cultivated the grand Tao of emotionless cultivation, he could easily condense water into ice and also transform ice into water. For him, comprehending water attainment and water attainment was equivalent to comprehending ice attainment and ice attainment. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Yan opened the exquisite box. Almost the instant the box was opened, Zhang Yan's eyes couldn't help but narrow. A fragment shimmering with an aquamarine aura appeared before him. "Young man, congratulations. This 8th level Imperial Realm water attainment fragment is yours." At the same time, a familiar yet unfamiliar voice entered Zhang Yan's ears, carrying an extremely terrifying penetrating power spreading far and wide. Not good. Hearing the voice, Zhang Yan dared not delay in the slightest, hastily flew out, and left the cave at the first opportunity. Having learned his lesson last time, he dared not take any more risks. Last time, he had finally obtained a fire attainment fragment, but due to Feng Tianwu's appearance, it fell into her hands. As the saying goes, a fall in the pit, a gain in your wit. To avoid repeating the same mistake, Zhang Yan fled immediately. Whoosh! Whoosh! Just as Zhang Yan left, two ghostly figures appeared inside the cave at the same time. Looking at the water attainment fragments, scattered all over the ground, both of them frowned simultaneously. "Is the water attainment fragment in your hand?" Immediately after, the two looked at each other in tacit understanding and spoke in unison. The two exchanged another deep glance before each departing to find the person who had obtained the 9th level Imperial Realm water attainment fragment. Inside, a certain cave in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Whoosh! A figure like a purple lightning bolt swiftly entered the cave, carefully scanning the surroundings, not missing any details, as if searching for something. The owner of the figure was none other than Duanling Tian. More than 10 days had passed since he broke through to the Void Transformation Realm 2nd level. During this time, Duanling Tian held 2 attainment fragments in his hands, simultaneously comprehending 2 attainments, while conducting a carpet search in all directions, intending to find the person who had obtained the 3-colored fruit. Now, even if I find that person, he has probably already consumed 2 spirit fruits. After searching this cave for a while and confirming there were no discoveries, Duanling Tian flew out and entered another cave. Duanling Tian searched one cave after another, very patiently. Soon, Duanling Tian swept into a relatively secluded cave and began searching everywhere again, not missing a single corner. In an inconspicuous corner on one side of the cave ceiling, inside a small, dark cave, a white-clad young man was sitting cross-legged, cultivating peacefully. "Zisheng, you and this Duanling Tian are truly fated to be enemies." Suddenly, a sinister, hoarse, and ancient voice echoed in the white-clad young man's mind, causing him to instantly awaken from his cultivation. "Duanling Tian?" The white-clad young man was Zisheng. Upon hearing the voice in his mind, a cold light flashed in his eyes in the darkness, as if he wanted to devour someone. Duanling Tian, this name, he was naturally not unfamiliar with. From the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom to now, that person seemed to be his fated enemy. No matter where he went or how high he stood, the other party would appear before him. Not only that, in his numerous confrontations with the other party, he was always at a disadvantage, which made him extremely frustrated. Originally, he had the remnant soul of a powerful expert attached to him, allowing him to possess immense power, but he was restrained by a stone tablet in the other party's hand, which almost drove him mad. "Duanling Tian, it really is you." Sitting, cross-legged in the small, dark cave, Zishang's gaze immediately fell upon the purple figure in the outer cave, his eyes filled with ferocity. Almost the instant Zishang's gaze focused on Duanling Tian frowned, feeling as if he was being spied upon. At the same time, he suddenly looked up towards the secluded corner on one side of the cave ceiling. A dark opening, just large enough for one person to enter and exit, appeared before him. Just as Duanling Tian was about to use his spiritual power to investigate inside, he found that a white figure suddenly shot out from within the cave, slowly descending. And appearing before him, Zisheng. Seeing the white-clad young man before him, Duanling Tian's pupils contracted, somewhat bewildered and horrified. You're not dead?" At this moment, Duanling Tian was immensely shocked. That day, upon entering the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, Zisheng ambushed him on the high platform, and they both fell into the bottomless abyss, where they engaged in a duel. In that battle, he used the power of 1,000 ancient horned dragons to overpower Zisheng's 878 ancient horned dragons, almost killing Zisheng. When Zisheng took out the fragment of the demon sealing tablet that had been lost and used its power to fall into the bottomless abyss, Duanling Tian had thought he was surely dead. But who knew? Not only was Zisheng not dead, he even appeared here before him. "You're not dead yet, so how could I, Zisheng, die?" Zisheng sneered. "Duanling Tian, it seems we truly are fated enemies to meet even here. Today, I, Zisheng, will settle all past grievances with you. I, Zisheng, will ensure you die without a burial place today." By the end of his words, Zisheng's face was filled with confidence, and his eyes gleamed with killing intent. In that instant, he seemed to transform into a bloodthirsty beast, ready to pounce on Duanling Tian at any moment. Die without a burial place? Zisheng's confident words made Duanling Tian pause, wondering where Zisheng got such immense confidence. It wasn't until his spiritual energy extended outward that he got the answer he sought. First-level void transformation. This Zisheng, he actually broke through to the first-level void transformation. After sensing Zisheng's cultivation, Duanling Tian couldn't help but gasp, a hint of undetectable shock in his eyes. He knew Zisheng's cultivation. On that day, when they first entered the Martial Emperor's treasure, Zisheng had displayed impressive strength, but it mainly relied on 2 void transformation concepts. His cultivation was only at the 7th level void prying. How long had it been? And Zisheng had already crossed 3 levels, breaking through to the 1st level void transformation in one go? No. Just as Duanling Tian felt a sudden shock, a thought flashed in his mind, and he immediately remembered the reason he had found this place. This Zisheng, hiding in such a secluded small cave. Was he cultivating inside? Breaking through 3 levels in such a short time and reaching the 1st level void transformation in one go. Could it be that he obtained the 3 colored fruit? Thinking of this, Duanling Tian's pupils involuntarily constricted. It couldn't be that coincidental, could it? At this moment, Duanling Tian couldn't help but recall that in the damp cave where he discovered the 3-colored tree, the wounds on the 2 corpses were made by the same person. The attacker used a spear-like weapon, and Zisheng used a spear. It seems it really is that coincidental. Not only are Zisheng and I fated enemies, but the very thing I've been searching for over 10 days is on him. Thinking of this, Duanling Tian's gaze towards Zisheng grew even colder. "If you want me to die without a burial place, just come at me. I'll let you know that if I could make you flee in disarray back then, I can kill you today too." Duan. Ling Tian sneered in response to Zishang's provocation, his face filled with disdain. Duan Ling Tian, do you really think I'm still the same me as before? Seeing the disdain on Duan Ling Tian's face, Zishang couldn't help but laugh loudly, his laughter wild. As he spoke, a hint of sinister brutality entered his tone. Today, I, Zishang, will send you on your way. Duan Ling Tian, in your next life, be sure to remember not to provoke me, Zishang, again. Zishang spoke sharply. As soon as his voice fell, a 7-foot-long spear appeared in his hand. It was his Grade 2 Spirit Spear. As soon as the Grade 2 Spirit Spear appeared, it was enveloped by a milky white elemental energy, which quickly merged with the fire concept, transforming into vast flames, like a fire dragon swimming around the spear shaft. Soon, the gale formed. By the wind concept surged into the fire dragon, causing it to swell and emit an even more powerful aura. Fire borrowing wind's momentum. Whoosh! Above the void, the power of heaven and earth stirred, and a heaven and earth phenomenon appeared, finally converging into more than 1,050 ancient horned dragon phantoms, winding down with a magnificent aura. Back then, when Zishang's cultivation was at the 7th level void prying, he could unleash the power of 876 ancient horned dragons by relying on the 3rd level advanced wind concept, 1st level advanced fire concept, and the technique of fire borrowing wind's momentum, coupled with his Grade 2 Spirit Spear. Now, his cultivation had broken through to the 1st level void transformation, and his full elemental energy burst forth, comparable to the power of 200 ancient horned dragons. This was a full 100 ancient horned dragons, more than his strength at the 7th level void prying. Adding the 78% amplification power of the Grade 2 Spirit Spear, he now had a total of 178 ancient horned dragons more power than before. For this reason, Zishang, whose cultivation had broken through to the 1st level void transformation, now unleashed his full power, comparable to more than 1,050 ancient horned dragons. Holding the Grade 2 Spirit Spear, Zishang's face was full of confidence. In his opinion, Duan Ling Tian's full power back then was only comparable to 1,000 ancient horned dragons, a full 50-plus ancient horned dragons less than his current strength. Killing Duan Ling Tian would be effortless for him. Duan Ling Tian, die! Zishang's eyes turned cold, and with killing intent covering his face, he roared. The Grade 2 Spirit Spear, entwined with wind and fire energy, suddenly shook and thrust towards Duan Ling Tian. Whoosh! As Zishang's figure darted out, the Grade 2 Spirit Spear trembled, and an overwhelming barrage of spear light rained down like a meteor shower, directly targeting Duan Ling Tian's position. You're not the same you as before. Do you think I'm still the same me as before? Facing the overwhelming spear light that swept towards him, Duan Ling Tian's expression remained unchanged, speaking calmly, unfazed, as if a mountain were collapsing before him. Playing tricks. Seeing Duan Ling Tian show no fear at all when facing his attack, which contained the power of over 1,050 ancient horned dragons, Zishang's eyes flashed with fierce light, and the power on his Grade 2 Spirit Spear surged even further. Whoosh, 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 whoosh! The overwhelming wind and fire spear light rained down, completely enveloping Duan Ling Tian, clearly intending to blast him to death. Whether it's a trick or not, you'll know very soon. Duan Ling Tian's lips curled into a playful smile. With a raise of his hand, a sword appeared in his grasp, a sword that faintly exuded a destructive aura, a quasi-emperor grade spirit sword. The moment the quasi-emperor grade spirit sword appeared, elemental energy surged from Duan Ling Tian, then transformed into an earthy yellow power entwined with purple lightning and azure gales, completely merging into the quasi-emperor grade spirit sword. Buzz! Instantly, the sword light on the quasi-emperor grade spirit sword flared, emitting a series of crisp sword cries. At the same time, above the void above Duan Ling Tian's head, the power of heaven and earth stirred, beginning to gather and condense into a heaven and earth phenomenon. Before the heaven and earth phenomenon could fully take shape, Zishang's overwhelming spearlight attack had already arrived, descending upon Duan Ling Tian with fierce momentum. Wherever the spearlight passed, in addition to causing bursts of ear-piercing wind howls, it also stirred up countless rolling air currents, causing strong winds to rage in the cave and dust to fill the air. The strong winds surged, making Duan Ling Tian's purple robes flutter, making him appear even more graceful. Facing the encroaching strong winds, Duan Ling Tian's expression remained unchanged. His gaze was fixed on the overwhelming spear light descending upon him. At this moment, in his world, it seemed only these spear lights remained. Die! Seeing Duan Ling Tian enveloped by the overwhelming spear light about to be blasted to death, Zishang's face showed a wanton smile, and he excitedly roared as power continued to surge from his grade 2 spirit spear. However, in the next moment, the smile on his face completely froze. He clearly saw that, facing the overwhelming spear light he unleashed, Duanling Tian moved. With just one lightning-fast sword strike, wherever the sword passed, all the spear lights were shattered. Impossible! Seeing this scene, Zishang frantically shook his head, unwilling to believe that what he saw was real. When he inadvertently looked up at the void above Duanling Tian's head, where the 1/200 ancient horned dragon phantoms had already fully condensed. He was stunned, completely stunned. He never expected that, in such a short time, Duanling Tian's improvement would be even greater than his own. The strength Duanling Tian now displayed was a full 200 ancient horned dragons more than last time, far beyond what his own progress could compare to. Of course, Zishang didn't know that Duanling Tian, in unleashing the power of 1/200 ancient horned dragons, was still holding back a little. Otherwise, if he were to use the Earth concept to borrow Earth force, he could gain an additional 50 ancient horned dragons of power, equivalent to half the power of the Earth concept. He currently mastered whoosh! Duanling Tian swept out with a single sword without employing any martial skills, effortlessly shattering the overwhelming spear light that rained down on him. As if playing a game, in the face of absolute power, even the most profound martial skills were rendered useless. At this moment, the power contained in Duanling Tian's sword was a full 140-plus ancient horned dragons, stronger than Zishang's entire power. The two were completely not on the same level. Zishang. After obliterating the overwhelming spearlight, Duanling Tian's quasi-emperor grade spirit sword continued its momentum, swiftly sweeping towards Zishang, still without using any martial skills. Whoosh! A sword came from the west, containing the power of 200 ancient horned dragons, causing air currents to surge and stirring up bursts of ear-piercing air explosions as air currents and strong winds swept out. Whoosh! Facing Duanling Tian's sword, Zishang dared not be negligent, his expression solemn as he met it with his spear. The wind and fire energy on the spear surged, and spear light swept out, like a divine dragon opening its gaping maw, attempting to swallow the sword in Duanling Tian's hand. Clang! Finally, the sword in Duanling Tian's hand and the spear in Zishang's hand collided, and two terrifying forces crashed together, emitting a terrifying roar. Boom, 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 boom! Bursts of thunderous air explosions erupted, stirring up rolling air currents and causing strong winds to sweep out in all directions, raging throughout the entire cave, leaving no corner untouched. Crack! 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 Zishang's face was deathly pale and his body trembled violently. From where he stood, countless cracks spread out, forming a hideous and terrifying spiderweb. Duanling Tian, on the other hand, stood in the low air, his expression calm, casually resting the tip of his quasi-emperor grade spirit sword against the tip of Zishang's grade 2 spirit spear. Get lost? Suddenly, Duanling Tian roared, and the power on his quasi-emperor grade spirit sword instantly surged, pouring out with destructive force, engulfing Zishang entirely. Boom! In the next moment, Zishang, along with his spear, flew out, slamming heavily against the cave wall. After landing, he used his spirit spear to support himself, barely managing to stand firm. Old ghost! Although supported by the grade 2 spirit spear, Zishang was still kneeling on the ground, continuously spitting out mouthfuls of clotted blood. The spilled blood formed a dazzling stream on the ground in front of him. Now he felt as if all the strength in his body had been drained, and he no longer had the power to fight Duanling Tian. In such a predicament, he could only place his hopes on the ghost fire hidden within him. However, the ghost fire did not respond to Zishang this time. Old ghost, old ghost. Zishang continued to call out, his tone filled with anxiety, but the ghost fire still did not respond, as if it had completely disappeared. At this moment, Zishang also sensed that something was wrong. For a moment, he couldn't help but struggle to raise his head, looking at the purple-clad youth who was walking towards him step by step. When he saw a chipped stone tablet in the purple-clad youth's hand, his heart trembled, and he finally realized why the ghost fire was ignoring him. Duanling Tian had taken out the devil sealing tablet, which suppressed the ghost fire, naturally meaning that the ghost fire could not come out to help him. Duanling Tian, staring at the purple-clad youth who stood not far in front of him, looking down at him, Zishang couldn't help but grit his teeth, his eyes filled with not only anger but also a hint of bitterness. He knew he was finished. Given the hatred between him and Duanling Tian, even if he softened and begged for mercy, Duanling Tian would never let him go. Because of this, Zishang struggled to stand up completely, relying on the grade 2 spirit spear, his eyes filled with hatred as he stared at Duanling Tian. Duanling Tian, even if I die, I won't let you go. I won't let you go even as a ghost. Duanling Tian, holding the devil sealing tablet in one hand to guard against the remnant soul of a suspected martial emperor expert within Zishang, and a sword in the other, was already staring coldly at Zishang. As long as his sword struck, Zishang would undoubtedly die. Now, Zishang's words reached his ears, making him unable to help but laugh. Then he glanced at Zishang disdainfully and said indifferently, Zishang, do you think, if I'm not afraid of you when you're alive, will I be afraid of you when you're dead? Ha 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 ha. Just then, Zishang laughed strangely, his laughter unrestrained and without any disguise. What are you laughing at? Duanling Tian frowned, staring coldly at Zishang. At this moment, Zishang's laughter gradually ceased, but his face was still covered with a smile, a sinister smile. Immediately after, Zishang looked at Duanling Tian as if he were looking at a dead man, and sneered, Duanling Tian, what if you kill me? As long as the higher-ups of Kangwell Fort know that the devil sealing tablet is in your hands, they will never let you go. On the Yellow Springs Road, I'll be waiting for you. I'll definitely be waiting for you. Towards the end of his words, Zishang started laughing again, as if he had already seen the scene of Duanling Tian being killed by the higher-ups of Kangwell Fort not long after. Then, you can wait slowly, Duanling Tian sneered, and with a raised hand, a sword flashed out, stabbing towards Zishang. This sword caused Zishang, who had originally shown a look of relief, to change his expression drastically and let out a muffled groan. Duanling Tian did not directly kill Zishang. The sword in his hand landed on Zishang's right wrist and suddenly flicked. Blood spurted. Duanling Tian's sword severed Zishang's tendons, causing Zishang, who now only had one hand, to sway precariously. Now, fortunately, Zishang could still hold the Grade 2 Spirit Spear with his other hand. Otherwise, he would have fallen heavily to the ground, face-planting. Whoosh! Unfortunately, as Duanling Tian's second sword struck, severing the tendons of Zishang's remaining hand, Zishang could no longer support himself and fell heavily to the ground, looking utterly disheveled. Duanling Tian, if you're a man, give me a quick death. If you don't give me a quick death, you're a bastard son of a bitch. Zishang groaned again, struggling to raise his head and glare at Duanling Tian, who was looking down at him, shouting fiercely, intending to provoke Duanling Tian into giving him a quick death. As soon as Zishang's words fell, Duanling Tian's eyes were instantly covered with a layer of crimson. Others could curse him, but cursing his mother was absolutely not allowed. You want to die quickly, but I just won't grant your wish. I will let you die slowly and painfully. At this moment, Duanling Tian's voice was extremely cold, as if it came from an ice cave, making people shiver with dread. Zishang, who had intended to provoke Duanling Tian but unexpectedly backfired, instantly changed his expression drastically. Whoosh! Duanling Tian's sword struck again, making a flourish, slowly crippling one of Zishang's legs. During this process, Zishang could no longer hold back and screamed in pain. Duanling Tian, you are a devil. You are a devil. It wasn't until Duanling Tian put away his sword that Zishang finally caught his breath and shouted fiercely, Whoosh! Soon, the sword in Duanling Tian's hand struck again. Zishang's other leg was crippled, and he continued to scream in agony, his face pale until he managed to stop the bleeding from his wounds by using his elemental energy, and his complexion eased a little. Whoosh! Duanling Tian's face was cold, a fierce glint flashed in his eyes, and the sword in his hand struck again, directly crippling Zishang's dantian. Ah! This time, after a scream, Zishang directly fainted. At the same time, the elemental energy that stopped the bleeding on Zishang's body vanished, and blood continuously flowed from the wounds on his limbs, instantly turning into a river that submerged him. Even now, the fierce glint in Duanling Tian's eyes showed no sign of fading. In his previous life on Earth, he was an orphan with no parents. When he came to this world, he had a mother, Li Ru. Li Ru's love for him made him completely regard Li Ru as his biological mother. If he were to say who he cared about most in this world, it would undoubtedly be Li Ru, his mother in this life. A dragon has reverse scales. Touching them means death. His mother was his reverse scale. And just now, Zishang insulted his mother, making him thoroughly furious, enraged to the extreme, his emotions difficult to suppress. Whoosh! Seeing that Zishang would soon die from excessive bleeding in his coma, a fierce glint flashed in Duanling Tian's eyes. With a raised hand, he took out an unopened jar of wine from his spatial ring. Removing the seal from the wine jar, Duanling Tian poured the wine over Zishang's head. The cold wine made Zishang shiver, and he fully regained consciousness. However, Zishang, who had just woken up, felt a tearing pain throughout his body and continued to scream in agony, no longer having his previous carefree demeanor. With his cultivation crippled, Zishang could no longer mobilize his elemental energy to stop the bleeding from his wounds. He could only watch helplessly as the blood continuously flowed from his body. Soon, Zishang's eyelids rolled back, and he fainted again. Duanling Tian patiently poured the wine over Zishang's head again and again, causing Zishang to wake up repeatedly, letting out screams of agony and then fainting again. Duanling Tian, give me a quick death. I beg you, please, please. Eventually, Zishang, pale and weak, kept begging. From the moment you insulted my mother, you should have known there would be such consequences. However, Duanling Tian ignored Zishang and continued to torment him. Half an hour later, Zishang's head flopped, hitting the ground hard. He died from excessive bleeding, completely lifeless. Zishang was dead, completely dead. As Zishang died, Duanling Tian's anger gradually dissipated. When he looked at Zishang's eyes again, they still gleamed with a cold light, but no longer held the deep-seated hatred from before. Staring at Zishang's corpse, Duanling Tian's gaze became somewhat dazed. At this moment, he couldn't help but recall the first time he met Zishang. At that time, Zishang arrived on a flying demonic beast at the peak of the Tianshu, peak of the Seven-Star Sword Sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, intending to lay claim to his fiancée, Kier. Subsequently, he and Zishang had a conflict and even made a 2-year agreement. 2 years later, he, relying on his soul skill, Thousand Illusions, easily defeated Zishang, who was several levels stronger than him, causing Zishang to leave unwillingly. He met Zishang again during the Dynasty Martial competition of the Han Dynasty, and their conflict deepened. Duanling Tian casually glanced at Zishang's corpse and then put Zishang's spatial ring away. Hiss! Immediately after, a wisp of purple-gold-edged flame ignited in Duanling Tian's hand, ready to be sprinkled on Zishang's corpse to make him completely disappear from this world. Wait! Just then, a sinister, hoarse, and aged voice entered. Duanling Tian's ears filled with urgency. Duanling Tian, don't burn it yet. Don't burn it yet. What? Old fellow, are you scared? Duanling Tian's eyes flashed, and a cold sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth as he said indifferently, Duanling Tian, if you are willing to let me go and let me temporarily reside in your body, I will definitely help you well in the future. As long as I am here, you will definitely... This voice was naturally the remnant soul, or ghost fire, suspected to be a Martial Emperor expert, residing within Zishang. Now, seeing that its host, Zishang, had been killed, it urgently wanted to find another host. Otherwise, its remnant soul would completely dissipate. However, before it could finish speaking, it abruptly stopped. Then, after a pause, it cried out in extreme panic, What are you doing? No! Unfortunately, the ghost fire's words were destined to remain unfinished, because when the ghost fire paused just now, the flame in Duanling Tian's hand had already been sprinkled on Zishang's corpse, igniting the strong liquor on Zishang's body. The flames flared up, engulfing Zishang and also preventing the ghost fire from continuing its words, making the ghost fire disappear from this world as well. Zishang and the ghost fire, both dead. From beginning to end, Duanling Tian's face was cold. He naturally heard the ghost fire's voice clearly, but he didn't pay attention. He didn't know the origin or background of ghost fire. If he allowed ghost fire to possess him, he didn't know what potential dangers might arise in the future. Therefore, he dared not take the risk. That spirit fruit... After regaining his composure, Duanling Tian performed the blood recognition ritual on Zishang's spatial ring. Just as Duanling Tian had guessed, only one of the 3 spirit fruits that grew on the 3-colored tree remained. Zishang had consumed 2 of them. Zishang probably only had enough time to digest the medicinal power of 1 spirit fruit. Otherwise, once he digested the medicinal power of the 2nd spirit fruit, his cultivation would surely have risen to the void-prying stage 2. Thinking of this, Duanling Tian secretly felt a little fortunate. If Zishang had broken through to the void-prying stage 2, he would undoubtedly be a formidable enemy. Just now, it was precisely because he possessed power that could completely crush Zishang that he was able to heavily injure him in one encounter. Otherwise, it would not have been so smooth. If I hadn't come here because I discovered the 3-colored tree, or if Zishang had taken the 3-colored tree, along with the 3 spirit fruits, I wouldn't have been able to arrive here in time and encounter him, who was hiding here. At this thought, a hint of apprehension couldn't help but appear in Duanling Tian's eyes. Once Zishang absorbs and digests those 3 spirit fruits, his cultivation will surely break through to the void-prying stage 3. Once that happens, if I encounter him, I will undoubtedly be defeated. If I want to kill him, I can only use a talisman. The more Duanling Tian thought about it, the more alarmed he became. After his mood calmed down, A few hints of relief couldn't help but appear on his face. He was relieved to have saved a talisman left by his cheap father. Soon, Duanling Tian's attention shifted elsewhere, looking at the red spirit fruit. In his hand, which seemed to drip blood, Duanling Tian's eyes flashed. After taking this spirit fruit and advancing my cultivation, I will continue to search for the location of the central area. At this thought, Duanling Tian subconsciously looked towards the side of the ceiling of this secluded cave. The inconspicuous black hole in that corner was where Zishang had been lurking earlier. I'll cultivate right here, Duanling Tian flew out and instantly swept into the black hole, finding it empty and spacious enough to easily accommodate his entire body. This small cave was clearly just opened not long ago. It seems it was the work of that Zishang, Duanling Tian thought to himself. Zishang's death also allowed Duanling Tian to breathe a sigh of relief. Otherwise, he would have felt a thorn in his side, and that old ghost, he was truly too strange. But fortunately, he was also eliminated, posing no further threat to me. Duanling Tian's eyes flashed as he thought to himself. This time, all 20 disciples of the Azure Wolf Fort died at my hands. This can be considered as me reclaiming a bit of interest from the Azure Wolf Fort for myself. If the several vice fort masters of the Azure Wolf Fort knew all this, they would probably be so angry they'd vomit 3 liters of blood, wouldn't they? Thinking of this, Duanling Tian felt a surge of secret satisfaction. Back then, the people of the Azure Wolf Fort, coveting the demon sealing tablet in his hand, almost killed him and caused an innocent person to die for him. From that moment on, his hatred for the Azure Wolf Fort had been deeply rooted in his heart. In the future, as long as his strength improved, he would definitely go to the Ancient Desert City to settle accounts with the Azure Wolf Fort. Leaving aside others, the 4 vice fort masters of the Azure Wolf Fort who led the pursuit of him would surely die. Meng Li, Ning Kan, Yukong, Feng Wei. Duanling Tian slowly spoke, enunciating each name of the 4 vice fort masters of the Azure Wolf Fort, his eyes filled with extreme coldness. After a moment, Duanling Tian, having caught his breath, stuffed the red spirit fruit in his hand, into his mouth, and swallowed it. The warm current formed by the medicinal power instantly integrated into his body. Soon, the true energy within his body began to fluctuate, and the potent medicinal power of the nirvana pill hidden deep in his dantian rose with it, completely merging with the true energy. The 9 dragons, war sovereign art, roaming dragon transformation. For a time, Duanling Tian was completely immersed in cultivation, his cultivation level rapidly increasing at an extremely terrifying speed under the dual impetus of the spirit fruit's medicinal power and the potent medicinal power of the nirvana pill, while Duanling Tian was diligently cultivating in a certain cave in the outer perimeter of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Boom, 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 boom. A series of loud noises continuously spread, and the entire cave was enveloped by gusts of strong wind, with sand and dust flying, making it difficult to see what was happening inside. Inside the cave, 2 figures were constantly intertwining, evenly matched. One of them, with every sweep of his saber, condensed a formidable saber light, carrying the momentum of splitting a mountain. The other, with hands wearing spirit tool gauntlets, every punch he threw was entwined with purple lightning, and each punch struck like a thunderclap. Peng Bao, hand over that profound fragment. Otherwise, I will kill you today. The muscular young man, whose punches were like thunder, had thick eyebrows and large eyes, and his voice was booming. Lei Jun, anyone can talk big. If you have the ability, kill me, and then take the profound fragment from my hand. However, the profound fragment in my hand, though it is a 7th level Emperor stage lightning profound fragment, is also suitable for you to use. But as far as I know, among the high-ranking members of your cloud-soaring sect, there seem to be quite a few who have comprehended the 9th level high-grade lightning profound intent, right? Even if you get this profound fragment, it will only be for others to benefit. Why are you so desperate? The young man, whose formidable saber light continuously shot out, faced Lei Jun's threat with indifference and instead advised, Lei Jun, if Duanling Tian were here, he would surely recognize him. This young man was Peng Bao, a disciple of the Impermanent sect, with whom he had met once and had a transaction. The current situation was obvious. Peng Bao had obtained one of the profound fragments in the outer perimeter of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, and it was an 8th level Emperor stage lightning profound fragment, attracting Lei Jun, a disciple of the cloud-soaring sect, who intended to contend with him. He and Lei Jun were evenly matched, making it difficult to determine a winner. After fighting for a while longer, Lei Jun also seemed to realize that he was unable to defeat Peng Bao, and his tone changed, becoming a bit calmer. Peng Bao, as far as I know, none of the high-ranking members of your impermanent sect have comprehended the 9th level high-grade lightning profound intent. Even if you take it back, The high-ranking members of your impermanent sect won't be able to use it. How about this? You name a condition. As long as you are willing to transfer this 7th level Emperor stage lightning profound fragment to me, I can agree to anything within the capabilities of our cloud-soaring sect. Towards the end, Lei Jun's tone was eager, desperately, wanting to obtain the profound fragment in Peng Bao's hand. Unless you are willing to help me obtain the profound fragment that our impermanent sect's high-ranking members need and exchange it with me, otherwise, you're dreaming. If you want the lightning profound fragment in my hand, Peng Bao said indifferently. What a joke. His impermanent sect and Lei Jun's cloud-soaring sect had been like fire and water for many years. If he gave up the lightning profound fragment in his hand, it would undoubtedly allow the cloud-soaring sect to produce another martial emperor powerhouse. And by then, the cloud-soaring sect would completely overpower their impermanence. Sect, therefore, even if their impermanent sect temporarily had no one who could use the lightning profound fragment, he would not possibly transfer it to someone from the cloud-soaring sect. Hearing Peng Bao's words, Lei Jun's expression darkened slightly, and his figure moved, suddenly retreating. Seeing Lei Jun retreat, Peng Bao did not pursue, standing in place, looking at Lei Jun with a calm expression. Peng Bao, I can agree to your terms. Lei Jun took a deep breath and assented. From this moment on, you and I will join forces to search for and contend for the 2nd profound fragment. Peng Bao heard this, and a smile appeared on his face. Lei Jun, the 2nd most powerful among the contemporary young generation of the cloud-soaring sect, his strength was no less than his own. Once he joined forces with Lei Jun, they would surely sweep away all obstacles and obtain the profound fragment that the impermanent sect needed. However, from now on, besides continuing to search for and contend for the other profound fragments in the outer perimeter, we must also begin to confirm the direction leading to the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, and head towards the central area, Peng Bao said. Immediately after, the small team temporarily formed by Peng Bao and Lei Jun began to move rapidly in the outer perimeter. Unfortunately, their dream of finding the other 4 profound fragments in the outer perimeter was difficult to realize. Those 4 profound fragments already had their respective owners. While Peng Bao and Lei Jun were searching for the direction of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure's central area, the group of people who had survived in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure were also searching. The central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure was the resting place of the Martial Emperor Powerhouse, who left the secret treasure after his natural lifespan ended. According to the Martial Emperor Powerhouse's message, his remains were there, not to mention the many treasures that might exist there. Just the 3 profound fragments within the Martial Emperor Powerhouse's body were enough to make people flock to them, even go crazy. 1 Emperor Stage Profound Fragment, 2 Royal Stage Profound Fragments. While everyone in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure was searching for the central area and beginning to head towards it, Duanling Tian remained immersed in cultivation, as if he had forgotten the passage of time. The 9 Dragons War Sovereign Art, Roaming Dragon Transformation. The true energy within his body, following the Roaming Dragon Transformation cultivation method, rapidly circulated through cycles, further and rapidly improving his cultivation. He didn't know how much time had passed. Duanling Tian opened, his eyes, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes hidden in the darkness, still a little short. After the potent medicinal power of the Nirvana pill returned to his Dantian, Duanling Tian woke up and did not continue cultivating. As for the medicinal power of that red spirit fruit, it had long been completely consumed by him. Currently, Duanling Tian's cultivation had successfully broken through to the Void Prying Stage 3, and even the bottleneck leading to the Void Prying Stage 4 had appeared, and was on the verge of breaking. Wind. Suddenly, within the small, dark cave, a swift whistling sound of wind arose, and later, the sound grew louder and louder. 3rd level high-grade wind profound intent. I finally comprehended it. Duanling Tian, muttering to himself, had barely finished speaking when his entire being seemed to transform into a gust of wind, blowing out of the small, dark cave and appearing in the spacious cave outside, which was as bright as day. Now, it's time to continue searching for the direction of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure's central area. Duanling Tian muttered again, and as soon as his voice fell, his figure was already gone.